What's up, guys? Standard Lifestyle. I'm going to do my best job to build the best overland tire carrier I possibly can. Today's video is brought to you by Barnes 4-Wheel Drive. A lot of people don't know that Barnes 4-Wheel Drive is more than just high-end suspension and axle building components. They also make a bunch of different bracketry and whatnot to help you build custom bumpers, to help you mount seatbelts to your cage, and in fact, they even have full skid systems and full bumper builds, all done so you can order them directly from their website. If you're in the market for anything like this, make sure you check out barnes4wheeldrive.com, and if you want to save an additional 10%, use coupon code DIRTLIFESTYLE at checkout. This Land Rover Discovery is finally getting to a point where it is almost ready to go on the trail. It now moves under its own power. I can shift it around the shop whenever I need to. And after a few more modifications like this tire carrier, we can finally get it out on the road and test it for the first time, and then eventually get it out on the trail and put it through its paces. We have got a gigantic project ahead of us today, folks. I cannot stress enough how important it is to understand how big of a project you're getting into before you start it. And I completely understand the gravity of the situation when I'm going to be building a tire carrier that is going to be corner protection. It's going to have to hold a 37-inch tall tire with a whole bunch of overlanding gear, also be able to pull a trailer. And in a really worst case scenario, if someone's behind me and they're stuck and I have a trailer on me, they might have to hook to my trailer, and this bumper might have to be strong enough to do all of those things in one shot. So this is a big project, and this is one of the few times you're ever going to see me sketch things out. I had so many ideas for this that I had to sketch a bunch of them out to try and figure out what I could and could not incorporate. So this is not exactly what it's going to look like, but this is close to the ideas that I see in my head. I've got a pile of parts that I ordered from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive because I think it's important to keep things like gussets on hand when you're doing a project of this size and that needs to have as much strength as you can possibly incorporate. So, of course, they sell some things like this that is going to make this way faster because I don't have to make it. Same thing with a mounting plate for a tire. But having gussets and having, if I mount some bolts onto the bottom side, having some protection for the bolt to make sure I don't just rub it off on rocks and whatnot, this is huge. These are valuable things to have on hand. So even though I don't know exactly how this tire carrier is going to turn out, I know that I have enough material on hand that I'm going to be able to make the best possible product that I can. Also, we're working with a new company in this one called EMS Off-Road. I was doing a lot of research on spindles. I was going to try to machine my own spindle, have a buddy machine some stuff for me. But when I found this kit on EMS, it literally has everything I was going to try and do myself. They use real bearings. So you're going to see other kits where it's just going to be basically a sleeve over a rod, and then it's just a thin layer of grease in between there. I wanted to have real bearings. I need something that's going to be super strong and virtually maintenance free. And so having real seals, real bearings, and a grease zerk made it to where this is clearly everything that I need. Plus, that is a heavy duty spindle right there. And that's exactly what we need. To be able to hold a 37-inch tall tire when it's flopping down the trail, it's so important to have things that are just as strong as possible. So thank you, EMS Off-Road. I contacted them. Turns out they watch the channel. So thank you very much, guys, for sending this and making this project a little bit easier. I've got a pile of steel over here. Believe it or not, that is going to turn into a bumper. Let's get started. Any good structure starts with a solid foundation. I'm going to use these weld washers I got from Barnes 4-Wheel Drive and have a really solid anchor point to mount this bumper to and make sure it has a strong connection to the chassis. Once that's established, I'm going to mount the factory hitch receiver and see if I can use that as an anchor point as well. 3/16 plate seems like a very appropriate material thickness to use as an anchor point for this bumper, something to build off of. It's rigid, but it's not so thick and heavy duty that it adds a ton of weight to the back here, and weight is something that I'm very conscious of because this is already such a heavy rig. I don't want to try and keep that weight down as much as possible. The first day on a build like this, I spent a ton of time just lining material up and just staring at it and thinking about the different ways that I could go. What's going to fit the best, what's going to look the best, and what's going to be the best form and function. Now that I have this 3/16 base plate shored up to the chassis, it's much easier for me to start to see the proportions of everything and see how my sketches and my ideas on paper are gonna translate to the real world. And there's already a ton of changes. We've bolted one piece of steel to this, and I've already changed a whole bunch of stuff in my mind. The big one is that I am not going to use this bumper as an anchor point for a tow hitch anymore. I'm gonna actually reuse the tow setup that came off of the Discovery whenever I got it. It's super solid, and it sucks that it hangs down kind of low, but this is a pretty tall vehicle, and because of what we're doing with it, it should be just fine. So I have a lot of faith in the factory tow setup, and having that independent from the bumper not only makes it to where it takes a lot of the stress and strain off of our bumper, but I'm gonna try to figure out a way to utilize that factory tow setup as another anchor point for the bumper to make sure that that bumper doesn't wiggle or move at all. So we're gonna see. I mean, a door closes, a window opens, right? That's what I'm trying to do here, is just see, now that I have it all in real life, what doors are gonna be closing, what windows are gonna be opening, and how I should proceed. A lot of times when I don't have a clear path forward, I have to just stick the stuff together that I know has to be there. Sometimes I work my way from the inside out, sometimes I work my way from the outside in. It all depends on what I know has to go next. The first task that really jumps out at me is designing some sort of a gusset system that's going to be able to support the hinge for this tire carrier. It's going to see a lot of stress, a lot of strain, and I want as little deflection as possible whenever there's movement in the carrier. What I see in my head is a couple of long, half-inch thick gussets that are trimmed to fit around the spindle. This will give me two really strong anchor points that I can stack at the top and the bottom of the spindle and make sure that this is a strong mounting location for that tire carrier. I have a small digital angle finder that I use for jobs like this that's perfect to check how square the spindle is up and down throughout the building process. I want to make sure that when I get to the next step, I'm not trying to build off of something that's already crooked and then have to figure out a clever way to compensate. If we make sure this stays true every time I tack something around it, then I'll have the confidence moving forward that I can build on top of it and nothing's going to turn out lopsided or leaning more heavily one way or another. I actually get asked about this little angle finder all the time, and as usual, I will put a list of a lot of the tools that I used in this build in the Amazon link that's in the description of this video. To build some heavy-duty mounts to link between the bumper and the hitch receiver. I have some 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 wide flat bar that I think is perfect for the job, and with a little bit of guessing on the angle, I was able to bend up some really nice tabs in my press brake. I'm going to use a little bit thinner material on top to cap this off, and the 1/8 inch material that I chose is plenty for the demand that the top of this bumper is going to see. Because of the shape and the way that the webbing is laid out in 3/16 throughout this bumper, it makes it to where the requirements for the top are much smaller. In the real world, all it needs to do is support my foot whenever I step on it to access the rooftop tent. We're making big progress on this bumper, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I've simplified my design from how I originally was envisioning it. What I decided to do now is just do a 90-degree termination on top, a 45-degree termination on bottom, and then just add some simple webbing throughout in order to make this really strong, because I'm shortening the span to the weak point. So the longer this piece of steel goes without having any support, it makes it to where whenever you push on the metal, there's going to be a lot more odds of deflection and whatnot. So when we put these little bits of webbing in here, it adds a ton of strength without a whole lot of weight, and it doesn't even take very much more time. Now, the way that I placed these 4 different pieces in the middle here is based on where I think it needs the strength the most and where it can be the most effective. So because I have these 2 points that mount to the chassis right here seemed like a good point to add this little chunk of webbing. And I'm going to drill a hole in front of it and plug weld this from the back side. So I'm going to weld it, surface weld it first, and then I'll have a hole in the back side that I can plug weld, and I'll be able to draw that weld directly from this to the webbing in order to give it a really strong connection. Also, on the back side, I'm going to add a gusset to make it to where whenever I do pull someone from that location, it's going to give it, it'll be able to spread that load out a little bit farther along this 3/16 plate, making it even stronger. So for this, I decided to build a gusset system that is going to reduce the amount of deflection as much as possible on this corner. Because we don't have a way to mount to the chassis right behind here, though the chassis mounts are over here. There's two bolts that mount to the chassis right there. So I wanted to have the smallest amount of deflection possible between our chassis mount and this, the hinge point for our entire carrier system. So that's why we have a big hunk of 1/2 inch steel up top, a big hunk of 1/2 inch steel on the bottom to spread that load between here and there and make it to where it's just a super strong joint that's going to have no deflection. Also, it's being wrapped with 3/16 certainly does not hurt. That is going to make it even stronger. Once we weld the top on and finish weld all this stuff, this thing is not going to budge. It's going to be a nice solid anchor point. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm probably going to locate our shackle receivers, and then I'm going to pull this off, and I'm going to finish weld anything that I won't be able to reach once I put the cap on. And then once I'm done with that, I'll put the cap on, we'll do our termination on bottom, and then we'll start working on our corner protection. When you finish weld and grind something as big as a bumper, there's a lot of squeezing and expanding that happens from the heating and cooling of the welds. I want to knock out the major part of my welding and grinding right here at the beginning, and then whenever we fabricate our corner protection, it's going to be a lot less likely that there's going to be any tweaking or any problems where holes don't line up. This is starting to look like a bumper now, and I like it. It's very simple. I did a rough grind, so as you can see, I mean, there's still some low spots and whatnot, and I will fill those in with weld and prep those better in the future. But right now, we just did our rough grind. We got everything bolted back on, and we can definitely see the shape that I'm going for. I had some ideas while I was doing all this grinding, because that was hours to grind all this down. I'm going to build a custom hitch in the future. I won't do it in like this video or the next video, but I'm going to build a custom hitch that will be higher so I can still have my cake and eat it too. I'll have a separate hitch system that mounts into the factory locations for all the bolts and whatnot, to make it to where it'll still be a strong anchor point for the bumper, but it won't give me such a hard time off-road. It's hard to tell in the camera. This is actually really high. I mean, this is tall. I don't expect this to be much of a problem as it sits right now, but either way, I would like it, in a perfect world, it could easily be 2 or 3 inches taller. So I'll build my own hitch system in the future. We did run into a snag, and the snag is that I'm out of gas. I don't have any more gas for the welder, and it's Saturday, so I can't go get gas until Monday. So the corner protection is gonna have to wait until the next video. So next video, we will knock out the corner protection, we will tie into the frame for the corner protection, and then we will build the tire carrier itself. So it's gonna be a big video, it's gonna be an exciting video, and at least we have a really nice foundation to build all of that onto. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I really enjoy making these, but they are a ton of work, and I'm always trying to become a better storyteller and get better at photography and all that. So I hope that that shows in some capacity and that you guys are enjoying watching these. I'm not going to do Q&A today because I decided that I'm going to take advantage of this little bit extra time that I wasn't going to be spending fabricating today. I'm going to clean the shop up entirely. I'm going to make sure that I have every single thing that I need to finish this next week. So that way, whenever the video comes out next week, it'll be a completely finished tire carrier painted on the Disco, and we can talk about you know, how do we like it? Should I build another one? Because I'm always up for that too. If this one doesn't really match the fit and finish of the Disco, then I'll pull it off and we'll just build another one, and I guess I'll sell the one that I make. So if you did enjoy the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to help support the channel, you can go to theundurlifestyle.com. We have t-shirts, sweatshirts, hats, neck gaiters, all kinds of stuff. We also have a link to our Patreon account if you want to help support us in that way as well. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm @DirtLifestyleNate. We'll see you next time.